Hey,
How you
Jeff,
doing?
how are you? Everything okay?
Yeah, good. You see me okay?
I can see you okay, and I can hear you okay, and
Good, great.
I can see all those nice things behind you.
Oh yeah, yeah. A few bits of kit. Yeah, I'm in my studio at the moment actually, so yeah, yeah. You get to see it all.
Yeah, do you work a lot in the studio every day?
Yeah, when I can, just I do a lot of updating software and that kind of stuff. So keeping all my computers all up to speed takes quite a bit of work. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's quite. I find it quite therapeutic.
And before we talk about the Mirror to the Sky record, you guys were supposed to do an European tour, well, April, May, I think, and
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, it was postponed for next year. And people sometimes don't understand that touring costs and everything, it's quite expensive now, and insurances are an
Yeah.
issue as well. Is it a bummer for you guys, after postponing this tour for quite a bit now, having to do it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very complex situation because we have the best intentions, and I know other people go out and other people take risks, but I think our organisation we don't really want to take too many risks, not just for ourselves, but for the crew guys and for the fans as well. So, um, the fact it's very very difficult to get insurance now so if someone can't make a show, non-appearance and all that sort of thing. So, but I think that next year we'll have it all in place, and you know, I think it's what five. I think it's probably the fifth year we're supposed to be coming out. I think we missed 3 years with the COVID, and
Yeah.
now we've got the various other problems. We've got a war going on in the Eastern Europe, so it's it's a strange old world, but we carry on and we try and make as much music as possible. I think that's the secret.
Yeah. And Mirror to the Sky, obviously the new record. When did you guys start working on the songs?
Probably about 18 months ago or so. I mean, we finished the tour and our last full blown tour in America in 2019. So that's coming up to 4 years ago. So we since then we've done we were on the Quest that time, the album before, and we started working on it fairly soon after. But there was a lot of exchanging ideas because a couple of the guys are living in the States, and Steve and myself, and latterly John had been living in the UK. So it's it's quite a complicated situation because the band is not UK based. We're all over the place.
Yeah. And when it comes to the songwriting, you exchange ideas, but you're still very much old school. You like to be in the same, space and jam around those ideas.
Yeah, I find it. I've had to work more that way in recent years, not just because of the COVID thing, but some of the people I've been collaborating with overseas. So it's not that easy to get together in a room and start plonking around on a piano, But which is how I used to write with John Wetton back in Asia. That was very much the style that we were. We were always in the same room. So it's a different way of working, and I think I got used to doing it quite a lot with Chris Braid on the Downs Braid Association project because Chris at that time was living in California and I was living in the UK. So uh, that was really the only way we could collaborate was via the internet and emails and sending files and that kind of thing. But as I say, it's a different way of working. I think that it's you know both have got their merits in many ways.
Yeah. And for this record, so you said like 18 months ago, like you were exchanging ideas. When did you guys, got together to work on the songs properly? You know,
Well, yeah, I think it's we worked in teams really, and when I was going to do I blocked myself out to do some keyboards. Steve was producing, so Steve was there most of the time. And then John would come in and do his vocals and work with Steve on that side of it. And Billy was working with Jay. I mean, originally the idea was for Alan, but unfortunately Alan was too sick. So
Yeah.
that was that was a very sad situation for us losing Alan. But certainly I think that Billy and Jay were doing the bulk of the rhythm tracks. And so that's really how it came together. So they were sending the rhythm tracks over. We were, working in different units. So I don't think there was any point where all five of us were in the same room together. So it's maybe one thing we look at in the future. I think that it might be interesting to try that again.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly it works in the past.
If it works, why, change it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that obviously all those great albums were made. Certainly the Yes albums in the '70s were all made. They were virtually made in the studio. I think that
Yeah.
I don't think there was a lot of preparation going in. It was just see what happens. And the five members of the band would start throwing ideas around, and it would really develop like that. So, as I say, there are two schools of thought. I think that necessity had to play a part in it when we had the COVID thing, because we weren't allowed in the same city together. It was just crazy. So. I think we got through it, and I think this album is really benefited from having a bit more hands-on collaboration between the various members.
Yeah. And no, listening to the record, obviously it's a Yes record. Like the melodies, you cannot really go wrong with them. As soon as you listen to vocals, okay, this is Yes. Luminosity is for me one of the standout tracks of this album. How was all these working process on the Luminosity song, because there's some keyboards and everything there. It's a great song. I love it.
Yeah, oh, good.
I was that when it comes for what is the part of a keyboard player in a band like Yes? It's just to fill the gap, in the songs. What is the normally when you go into?
Well, I think it's like a building block procedure, really. You sort of fit in where you want to, and a band like Yes is really quite open. I think that we don't have any restrictions of how we approach the music. So and that in many ways is a real luxury, because we can we can experiment and do things, and we've all got our own studios, so we can take home the tracks and then put some stuff on there, and so it's a very creative process, I think. And keyboards, certainly working with Steve, as I had been for many years, and not just in Yes, but in Asia as well.
Yeah.
I think Steve and myself got a very good we've got a very good understanding between guitar and keyboard. So he doesn't get in my way and I don't get in his way, and so I think that's one of the reasons why these albums are turning out very well, because we've got that good understanding that we've had since I joined the band in the first place. It was 1980 on the Drama album. So I've been working with Steve as a guitar and keyboards for over 40 years. So I think we've got, as I say, we've got a good knowledge and a good understanding of each other, of how we put it together.
Yeah. Is there any boundaries when it comes to the Yes music?
Well, I think you've got to, what we try to do is just have the dynamics in the music, and it's a bit like classical music in some respects. You've got to have those big sections, because Yes is known for those great big, those anthemic instrumental pieces, as well as these sort of more tender moments, where where it's just maybe just an acoustic guitar and a voice or something like that, you know. So, it could it goes from very small to huge, and I think that, Yes has always had that real emphasis on dynamics, and the wow factor can suddenly come in and take the band off in another direction. But from my standpoint, I see Yes music as being, it's almost like a very modern classical music that has those memorable motifs that come in, and then they get developed and come in a totally different way, but you can still recognize that little bit of melody, or that little tiny bit of a musical passage that comes back in a different way. And I think that the arranging in Yes is very, very important. To the arrangement of the music, because that's from the very beginning was always a big component of their music, I think.
Yeah, and one of the songs that's probably a bit different from the rest of the record is "Unknown Place." I was listening to the to the song, and I'll be honest, the first thing that came to mind was Lion King.
Yeah, really, yeah. Well, okay. That's not a bad comparison. I just hope we don't get sued. That's all.
But don't ask me why. I was listening to the song. I think it has almost like a tribal feeling in a way in the beginning, and I was thinking jungle, Lion King.
I think that's the idea behind it in some respects. It's that the chant, and that again, it's a different slant. I think that one of the beauties with Yes is that we try and not do anything, not be a parody of ourselves, but to do something new. And I think, something like that, I don't think it's anything like that's ever been on a Yes record before, So I'm glad you pointed that out, actually.
Yeah, it was for me another standout song because I'm so used to listening to what classic Yes music is, and obviously have the epic songs. And when Unknown Place came out, it just popped up because this is something a bit different, and it's still good.
Yeah, but it's I think the unexpected is a good thing sometimes, because if it fits into a formula, then maybe it's not got that earthy feel to it. So if we do something that's very, very different, and yet still it's still got the Yes sound to it in some ways, it's very it's very difficult to get away from that. I know the sound has developed over time because of all the different members that have been in the group over the years. So it's always it's never going to be the same each time. But I think that with this lineup, which has been together for 7 years now or so, I think that because Jay was understudying for Alan quite a bit of that time, I think that we've managed to get this unit that's really close knit together, and I think the proof of that is coming together on these albums. I know we've done I've done the last 4 studio albums, and I think we've managed to come up with something different each time. Not just for ourselves, but for the Yes fans as well. To appreciate that we're not just sitting back and playing the old standards, and that's it. And there you go, another evening of Yes music, and we're going to play, all the music from the 70s. We're actually challenging ourselves to come up with new stuff and make Yes music refreshing.
Yeah, it's still important, that side of making new music, because as you were saying, like you could be playing stuff from the 70s, the albums from start to finish, and I'm sure a lot of people would be happy with that. Some bands do that, as well. Kiss is a name that comes to mind when it comes to just playing old stuff and not really, doing new music. But for you guys, as obviously as musicians, is still important, that challenge of making music that can stand the test of time compared to what you guys have done throughout all these almost 50 years.
Yeah, I agree. And Yeah, I think that some bands do go out there and they just play their hits and that's it, and that's fine. That as you say, some people, plenty of people are going to enjoy that. But I think with a band like Yes, it's always about it's progressive music. So you want some progress. You want to see something new, and certainly, I mean, we're not going to go out and play the entire new album, because that would that would be crazy. People don't want to hear that because they wouldn't be familiar with it. A lot of them wouldn't be familiar with it. So you've got to throw in some of the old hits, some of the old favourites. But I think at the same time you can integrate some of the new material in there, and give people a taste of something a bit different.
Yeah. And, with technology developing, everything is becoming easier with plugins, and, you can have an iPad or, a tablet, whatever, and you
Yeah.
can have all sounds possible
Oh
in.
yeah, I know. Tell me about it. I've got thousands of them. It would take me about a million years to listen to every sound that I've got in my laptops and my computers here. But it's fun.
Do you like to explore that? Obviously, you have probably a lot of vintage stuff that you work with normally, but with this all new technology available and all, these plugins and stuff, is it fun for you to explore that side, that digital side, or you prefer still the analog, the physical stuff?
Well, I think that there's a foundation of keyboards, particularly with a band like Yes, that you can't really ignore. So you've got acoustic piano, you've got Hammond organ, you've got mellotrons, you've got mini moogs and poly moogs and things like that. That's all very much a part of that sound. So it's interesting for me to look into that and then look at some of these plugins that do emulate, Hammonds and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting thing, but the aspect of actually playing those instruments, they were so require such a intuition, because if you're playing a Hammond organ, you've got so many things that you can do at the same time, and you speed up the Leslie and that kind of thing. So it's very much a hands-on thing. So when I'm doing the album, particularly with Yes, I like to make sure that I've got a Hammond organ. I make sure I've got acoustic piano. Make sure I've got a hands-on mini Moog or something like that, because those are they're very intuitive to play. When you've got a plug-in, for instance, and you have it sounds pretty good. It sounds like a mellotron,
Yeah.
but it's the actual method of playing that mellotron that gave it the whole style. Because you press a note and it take about a second to start the tape up, and then you could only play it for a certain amount of time. So all these things required a certain amount of technique, and I think people that try and emulate that now, they don't always get the point that yeah, it can sound like a Hammond organ, but it's the actual technique of performance and that sort of thing, and all that sort of stuff on the keyboards,
Yeah.
and it gives that's what I go for. So in short, when I go to when I do an album, particularly with Yes, I mean, I'm not saying that I do other albums as well that I only use plugins, but I think I've got to respect the sound of Yes, that it is based on a lot of those early instruments, and
Yeah.
so I don't suddenly think it's just going to go into digital world and and that's going to change, because I don't think it would sound like Yes. It would sound like you know some guy who's just bought the latest software and he's doing it in his bedroom, on his iPad or whatever.
Yeah. And would be, obviously, technology, it is what it is. So we have to, play along with it. But, one of my vivid memories is watching John Lord plays Hammond, and I couldn't see anyone, playing not a proper Hammond organ on stage. And if I
No,
saw someone just with an iPad or with a just a small keyboard and having
No,
the sound of an Hammond. I was like, no, that's not.
it's not going to be that. No, because I mean, I use a cut down. I do have a Hammond, but it's a digital Hammond. But it still that sounds very good. But it is the technique. I mean, John Lord was probably I think, well, Keith Emerson and Rick Wakeman as well, but certainly John Lord's Hammond sound and his playing was incredible. And I saw that when I was a student. I went to, if I was still at school, I think, and I went to a concert at Manchester University, and he had this huge thing, and it was so loud. I mean, there were about four Leslie cabinets all lumped together, and he was doing that on the keyboard, and great big fat sound and brilliant. I mean, John Lord was an absolute master, particularly of Hammond organ.
Yeah. It's I appreciate technology, but I think we still need the people that can play those instruments for real, because there's something special when you play an organic instrument. If
Yeah, I mean, if someone's going to play, if I've got a synth pad on something, uh, you know, anybody could play that.
Yeah,
You've got, there's no. It's maybe you play four notes and it's a held chord or something like that on a pad. You know, anybody can do that. It's almost like a photographer. You know, anybody can use one of those.
yeah,
Take a photograph, but that doesn't make you a professional photographer.
yeah,
And I think that um, it does require and piano playing as well. That's an important thing. You can have a piano sample, but there's something about playing a real piano, and certainly with this. Well, every album that I do with Yes and with Asia actually has always been. I've always had a real piano and I've had you know, a real Hammond on there because that's the sound. The other thing is it cuts really well with the other instruments. There's a
yeah,
reason why people develop those instruments because they work so well with the guitar. It's a different level of frequencies. The bass guitar and the drums. It fits sort of somewhere in the middle, and that's really that's one of the skills I think of production and music, putting music together, is that you can get that find everything's got its little space.
yeah. And speaking of technology, with the Quest and with this record, you guys are releasing it on a Dolby Atmos format, which is like magnificent sounds.
Yeah, yeah,
How,
yeah.
how is the experience for you, to listen to a record, in that format? I mean, I'm sure you were able to be in the studio and listen to it
Yeah.
properly. I don't know if you had that experience or not, but if you did, how does it feel to listen to like a music that you make on that format, Dolby Atmos?
It's incredible. I think that it just opens up the whole spectrum. So instead of you just having it in front of you, you've got. I mean, it's been around for a long time. The sense around and all that kind of thing has been around for a long time. But when it comes to music, I think that the complexity of Yes music, there's a lot going on. So when you can hear things in more or less in isolation,
Yeah,
it's quite fascinating. And I think for someone to listen to that from and say, well, I can hear exactly what's going on with that bit and that bit there, and I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be everyone's taste. You've got to be a bit of a music buff and a bit of
yeah,
an enthusiast to appreciate that. But because most people, they'll just chuck something on in their car and listen to it there, or have it going on the little speaker in the Sonos or something like that. So it's more to do with the fact that I think that if you're a real geek, and you're really enthusiastic about the stuff, then it's a very interesting way of listening to it.
Yeah. I love, I'm so glad that, now some albums are being mixed in that format because, it's the way that he involves the person and the music, around, it's absolutely fascinating. I love that side of things. And, to wrap it up, what is I know this is a difficult question and probably a silly one, but I'm still going to make it anyway. Which is a record that you are most proud of?
Well, in terms of yeah, it's just a difficult one that because when you think, well, you're going to pick the one that sold the most, um, or you pick the first one. I picked Video Killed the Radio Star. Very proud of that, obviously. Not with the MTV thing, but more to do with the fact that it broke myself and Trevor into the music business. And I think that uh, I could never forget that. I'd never forget the first time I heard Video Killed the Radio Star on the radio and thinking, wow, that's something because we've gone from just this basic idea and it was groundbreaking at the time and went straight to number one all over the world apart from America. So um, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the drama album we did with Yes. I think that that's a very powerful album. I'm very proud of the First Asia album in particular because I think you know all this stuff. We work very hard. People seem to think that hey, these rock and roll guys, they're just out to party and do all that. But we were very very diligent and I spoke to Trevor Horn a while ago, and we went through the original tapes of Video Killed the Radio Star. Because, of course, now you can bake the old
Yeah.
multi tracks and then convert them to digital to Pro Tools or something like that. So listening to the precision that we did with the technology we had at the time, which was 44, 45 years ago, uh, and the clean recordings of everything, and the performances, that we were so particular about. Uh, that's the sort of thing that I'm really proud of. That I was actually able to work like that and put records together with that real uh, attention to detail.
Yeah. Do you think, just to finish up, now that you can, as you're saying, bake those tapes and get the tracks again, it's a good way to, to give like a newer mix, to those songs. Would be something that would interest you, to explore, the first records that you made back in the day and, get the tracks isolated again and mix them.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's certain constraints. I mean, you know, very often the record labels still own those tapes. So even though you've copied them and you've got them on a format, they still have the rights to those masters. So uh, and the royalty rates were so poor that you got, uh, in terms of. I mean, it's much better now. People get
Yeah.
much bigger royalties now, but then you're on like that much. So so to go through that whole process of remixing it, you'd still be constrained but held by your old contract unless you renegotiated it. But yeah, I mean, in terms of it being interesting, uh, I mean, I've heard some stuff like the in isolation Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, and you hear all the little sections there. So I think there's some merit in remixing it. I think that I think that some of the more modern guys, the hip hop and the dance guys that they can get samples from these original recordings and make something interesting out of it. So yeah, I mean it's all music. I think that's the thing, and I'm open to anything.
Yeah, cool. All right, Geoff, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All the best for
Yeah.
Mirror to the Sky. Hope to see you guys next year in Portugal. You guys were supposed to play here,
I
but
know that's going to be our first show, so
yeah,
I think it's going to be the first one again, hopefully, and this time we'll be there.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll be there as well to watch you
Okay.
guys play. What a pleasure to talk to you. Have
Yeah,
a
nice
good
talking to
day,
you, Yoga.
and hopes to see you next year. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Yoga. Thanks
Thank
a
you very
lot.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye
Bye
now.
bye.
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 Bye.